And good morning, folks. I think we are here and working. I'm using a bit of a different system at the moment, so hopefully it's going to go live in YouTube automatically. Looks like it's starting. So we are here and ready to go. Awesome. Now, I'm going to bring on a live guest right now, and let's see if all of this works okay. So we have Seon here as well.
Back again. Take
Yes,
Yeah.
and hopefully we'll have a bit less of a technical problem this time. What I've done with this particular setup is simplified things dramatically. Last time we were trying to do a Skype call and bring Skype into OBS and then OBS up to YouTube, and it was all falling over in a very bad way. So what we've done now is switch to using StreamYard. I don't have OBS running at all, and we are just sending our cameras straight to StreamYard, which is combining them and sending them to YouTube. So hopefully everything is good.
So far, it looks like everyone can hear us and see us, which is better than last time.
Yes, it's a big step up. So what I was thinking of doing for this session, I mean, it's always nice to chat to Seon, but it would also be cool to do something similar to what I often do on these live streams, which is just riffing on comments from the audience. So there might be things that we talk about and ignore comments for a while, but if people have ideas and things that they want us to talk about, then we can go off chasing squirrels,
Sure.
which is my standard thing.
Yeah, your favorite pastime.
Yeah.
You know what's the funniest part about that, I have to say? It's not when you do it. It's when you comment on the fact that you've done it. It's like when you have that realization that, oh, wow,
Yes.
It's happened again.
Yes. Yeah. 10 minutes will go by and I'll realize that I have no idea what I started talking about or what the original comment was. Yeah, and the other thing is that there may be people who are currently waiting on the stream on the original URL. Because I switched to doing this through StreamYard, it generated a new live stream.
Yep.
And hopefully everybody has ended up in the right place.
Let me see if I can get on that old one, see if anyone's there. I'll see if I can move them over.
Yeah, see if you can post a comment on it. Okay. Well, while you're checking that, there was a comment from Family Plan saying, how's the MQTT video going? And I guess that is in relation to the air quality sensor project. And the next video I'm doing in that series, so part 4 in that little mini series, is going to be about how to acquire data from sensors, store it in InfluxDB, and then generate charts from it and reporting on it. And that's all being done using MQTT. So the air quality sensors are publishing data periodically to MQTT, and they don't need to know anything else about what happens to the data. It's then taken, stored for charting over time, and then charts are generated. So yeah, I've been working on that. I've got an Influx setup and a Grafana setup that I've been using for testing. I've been pulling data from air quality sensors. In fact, something I should comment on, one of the reasons that I started to do this is I wanted to check the effect of the 3D printer and being in the same room as the 3D printer while it's running. And in the early days of 3D printing, I used to do everything with ABS, which absolutely stinks. And I was worried about the effect of fumes. And more recently, I've been using almost exclusively PETG. And what I heard from some people is that 3D printers emit microparticles of plastic, which can be potentially dangerous. So it's out of focus, but up inside the enclosure up the top just there, I've put in a particulate matter sensor. And one of the weird things that I've noticed as I've been working on this upcoming video is that when I run the 3D printer, there is no change in the particulate levels. So the sensor that's inside the enclosure can't even tell that the 3D printer is running. But if I start up my soldering iron here on the bench, 4 meters away, within a minute or two, there is a spike on that sensor. So it seems that soldering is generating a very significant amount of particulate matter floating around, like down at the micron and submicron region, which is not good.
You're pretty far away though from your bench. Like,
Yeah,
that's insane.
It's about 4 meters away. And
So
the
what
sensor is inside the enclosure, which is not airtight. There's a little gap around all of the edges. It's just to prevent wind, impacting the temperature of the print.
Yeah.
But if I start, like, if I'm looking at, for example, the 0.3 micron particulate matter count, so the parts per deciliter, it's often sitting around 300, 400 parts per deciliter. If I start my soldering iron, it'll hit like 2,000-3,000 within a couple of minutes.
So have you measured next to the soldering iron?
Not right next to it. I've got another particulate matter sensor sitting here on the bench, but that's not the one that I've been using. I've been using that for testing the electronics. I haven't been using that for the Grafana stuff. But yes, I really want to do that. What would be interesting is having this one on the bench right near the soldering iron and have the two charts. So we could see if the close one spikes and then sometime later the other one spikes.
I'm more worried about the density of it.
Yeah, the concentration right in what you're breathing. Yeah.
I don't want to touch my soldering iron anymore now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's made me much more conscious of doing things like running the exhaust fan. I've got an exhaust system set up here, which has got, I think it's 100 millimeter PVC pipe running all the way around the bench. And then there are T-pieces that come up to pick up points at different locations around the bench. And there's one just near the soldering iron. So if I turn on the exhaust fan, it sucks air out from right where I'm working and then just vents it outside. So that's fairly effective. But the problem is that the exhaust fan is noisy. So I tend to not run it.
Right. Yeah. Is it close to the iron? Like, is it? I mean, I've got a soldering iron exhaust fan, like one of those Hecko clone ones on my desk.
Yeah.
It's noisy, so I don't use it when I'm soldering on a stream because no one's going to be able to hear anything, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So how close is the one that's next to you when you're iron?
About 50 centimeters away.
Okay.
So it's pretty close.
But that's not really close enough to pull the solder fumes.
Not totally.
I need to get mine really close. Like, it's got one of those cheap carbon filter things on the front, and I need to get it within 10 centimeters of my iron, or I can visually see the smoke not going in. Yeah,
you can see it just wafting out around. Yeah, I've also got another little thing. I'm just going to have to pull these out to grab it. It was just out of reach. So I also have this, which is a little homemade fan, and this, so it's just a laser cut bit of acrylic that's been bent. Got LEDs around it so I can illuminate the workspace, and a fan in it. So there's no filter in this whatsoever. Yeah, you'll have the same sort of thing. Yeah. Exactly. So mine has no filter in it whatsoever. All it's doing is sucking the air away from my face so that the smoke is not just drifting up. So what I normally do is have this up fairly close to whatever it is that I'm working on, and that sucks the smoke away, and it blows it back away from me down the bench, and then it gets sucked up by the general pickup.
That's clever. Yeah, I should actually do that with this. I mean, this actually works quite well, and it's a fairly large silent fan, 12-volt fan, or silent-ish compared to my other one. Yeah, that's a really good idea. I should be doing that and blowing it towards that. I like your idea of the PVC pipe, though. Like, I remember seeing it when I was at your workshop ages ago. I've been wanting to do something like that, but I'm so far away from my garage that I don't know what type of exhaust fan I could possibly get that would pull air far enough. Yeah. Because I wouldn't want the fan inside my office because it'd be too noisy, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Take it right out. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been thinking about putting the exhaust fan inside a box outside. So as you'd remember from when you were in my lab, the end wall of my lab is it's the end wall of the building. So what I'm doing at the moment is I've got the exhaust fan sitting under the bench, like the big inline fan, and it then goes through the wall and just vents outside. But what I could do is put a weatherproof box out there and put the fan just on the other side of the wall. I'd only be moving it like a meter. And at least that way the noise of it would be outside. I'd still get the rushing air noise and that sort of thing, but that's a lot less than running the fan.
I killed my video just then. Cool. Yeah. So,
you're back now.
Hussein just asked that same question, like, can you install it outside the room?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that would be the ideal, but that's I mean, it's just like using like in a wood workshop area where you've got, you know, all the different ports and but that's massive exhaust to pull stuff out.
Yes.
Yeah, I need to do like I got the same thing like with my pick and place that's coming. I need to run a separate air compressor for the feeders, the pneumatic feeders, and I bought myself like a silenced compressor, but it's still audible. You know, it's not silent. Like a proper silent screw compressor is like $6,000. I just can't justify that, right? Yeah. So even though this is silenced, I still want to put it outside in the garage. It means I have to like put holes everywhere and run. Run
hoses through. Yeah, it is a pain. Wouldn't it be nice to have a little factory space rather than trying to do this in our houses?
Honestly, no. Like I mean, I'm discussing that with Yaz a lot, really, because I'm like this whole pick and place disaster I've been on. I'm really limited on what I can buy that can fit in my office. Apart from that, I have to knock a whole wall down to get something through, right? Because I can't fit through a door. But you know, some of the pick and places I was looking at are like 1,200 kilograms and a 1.5 meters by 2 meters. Like they're massive.
Yes.
I don't want to put them in the garage because it's not dust proof and it's not clean enough for a pick and place machine. But the option is moving to a warehouse. But I don't I work so many hours as you do, right? I want the flexibility of being able to work whenever I want and not like I like being at home. I like working from here. Like if I had a warehouse set up, or a factory set up somewhere for all my stuff, I'd never be home.
Yeah. Right? Yes, I know that feeling. Yeah, that is really tricky, trying to get the balance. Like when I started IVT, I started it in a couple of spare rooms at my mum's house, which I was living in. She was living in England, so I basically had her house for a few years. And so I started the business there, and we ended up with, I think it was 6 staff working out of 2 very small spare rooms. Right. And there was 0 separation of personal and workspace. So one of the really big steps forward that we made was when we moved from the house and rented our first premises, which was just down in Croydon. It was an old shop front that we just closed the front of the shop front, put bars across it and cut and closed it basically and used it as our office. And the psychological difference between living at work and being home and work, being 2 separate places, was huge. Yeah. And now I'm back in the situation. So when you had your game business, did you have an office that you were working from then? You would have had.
Yes, I had. Well, it varied. Like, I was originally at home, and I had. This is a long journey, right? But when I first started. I was doing animation before I had games, so I had an animation studio, and so I converted a garage where I was living into an office, and I had 6 people working for me in a garage, like a single car garage. Yep. And eventually we moved into an office, and I got a massive, like it was incredible, like I could have fit 150 people in it, like it was ridiculous, and was there for like many years, and got up to like 50 people at one point in there, and then back down, kept like growing, shrinking. When I pivoted to games, I only had about 5 staff at the time, and we stayed at that level, but I was still in a external place. And then when I decided I want to wind games down for the first time, because I ended up selling that company, and I did that, and then I moved back, like moved into this space where I am now, just tinkering. This wasn't for anything. This was just my
hobby.
Yeah, right. But that whole game sale, well, it didn't blow up, like it happened, but then the company I sold it to destroyed my company within 7 months. Like they completely, whatever. And so when I started up my second games company, I did it here, and worked for myself for quite a while until I brought some staff back on. And so I had staff in here, but I never got more than 3-4 people in here, myself and 3 other people. And it was fairly comfortable because, and it's different to a normal workspace. I mean, we had couches everywhere and we had consoles everywhere and TVs everywhere. And it was more like a boys club type environment than a workplace, really. But that made me really not want to ever move out again. Like again, the flexibility of having everything I need here. Like, an email comes in and, I have to quickly do something. I have to quickly re-upload something to Sony or whatever, right? I just come in here and I do it. I don't have to get in my car and drive somewhere and for an unknown period of time and whatever.
That is huge. And I've noticed the same thing as I've been. So it sounds like we've basically had the same cycle. Started off from home, moved into premises for a number of years with a bunch of staff, and then we've ended up back at home working on our own again.
Yeah,
and it really is difficult because you can't have the psychological benefit of the total separation of home and work when you're at home. But there are all these advantages. The convenience is enormous. One thing that I find is being able to do things like kick off 3D prints and then come and take a print off the printer and start another one at 10 o'clock at night. And It might only take me 5 or 10 minutes. So like I will start a print. I'll be inside in the lounge room doing stuff on my laptop, watching TV, and then I see that the printer's finished. So I walk out, pull it off the printer and start another one, and then walk back in again.
Yeah.
If my workshop wasn't here, I couldn't do that.
Right. And so you'd end up taking 3 or 4 times longer to get the same amount of stuff printed.
Exactly. So the cycle time is much longer.
Yeah, for sure. I stopped fighting the whole separating work life stuff a long time ago. Right. I mean, I'm pretty honest with myself, like, and there was no point trying to pretend that I could separate the two of them, right? And Yaz knows that about me, and it's just, I walk into the house with exactly the same problems and issues and whatever that I'm in here, you know what I mean? I don't leave anything at the door either way. The same way that the family life spills into here as well. Like there's no separation from that either. It's just what it is. And so it's amazing. Like you get a sense of freedom when you're okay with the fact that you can't separate the two and that it's actually a problem.
It's like it's kind of like giving up, but it's like just resigning yourself to the fact that this is the way life is going to be. So we'll make the best of it.
That's right. Yeah. And there's a freedom in that, that there's no, like, you don't have to apologize to your partner that, oh, sorry, I need to go and do some work right now, or I need to go do this and do that. Like, I'm on a stream right now. The kids are inside the house. Yaz was up really late last night. She's not well. She is probably still asleep right now. And the fact that I can do that is awesome, right? If I wasn't to go somewhere to do this stream, then she'd have to get up, right? And then that affects them. She loves the fact that I'm around, and if she needs some help, I can drop whatever I'm doing and go and help her. So it works for everyone, I guess. Yeah.
And in a similar way, I've been doing school drop-off for quite a while now. So often my wife will pick Tommy up from school, but I'll do the drop-off in the morning, which means that she doesn't have to go off and do that. Yeah. So the flexibility is a huge advantage.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. Like, it seems like such a simple thing, but if she had to go do school drop-off in the morning, that changes her whole schedule in the morning. It puts a whole lot of stress and time. Yeah. Control is an illusion, apparently.
Oh, and also I noticed earlier, Dodgy, I think it was Dodgy, made a comment that the video quality is not as good as normal. And that's because we're going through StreamYard, which limits to 720p. So that's basically the trade-off that we're making to be able to do this multi-way call, the multi-way live stream.
And I have no idea why they do that. Like there should be no technical reason why they can't support 1080p. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true, because from our point of view, it's just 2 streams going into live stream servers. they do the combination on their end, and then all they're outputting is a single stream. So it should just be a single 1080p stream.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
other than that, it's a pretty good system. So
yeah,
bandwidth cost. Bandwidth's cheap now, Peter. Car costs. Apologise if I said anything wrong. You comment about bandwidth cost. I think these days bandwidth is negligible, like in terms of cost. And with all the compression techniques and stuff they're doing now, I wouldn't have thought that they, 720p or 1080p would have made much of a difference. Yeah,
true. Also, there was a comment from James O'Gorman said, well, a large part of the world just started working from home. Yeah, that's true. We've seen so many shortages in unexpected places recently, like computer shops sold out of monitors, webcams, all these sorts of things. The sort of stuff that normally you can just buy without thinking about it because stock is always there. Everything is sold out at the moment and has been for a while here in Australia.
Weird. That's the other thing as well. An interesting point is that working from home, like not everyone can, as in, let me say that. Not everyone has the fortitude, maybe that's not the right word, to work from home. Whether they have to work from home or not right now is beside the point. You know what I mean? Like I've always been able to work from home. I can always, like, I don't, like, I'm a procrastinator for sure, but I don't get distracted by being at home. Like I'm not the type of guy that goes and checks what's on TV or keeps walking to the fridge to get distracted. Like the space I'm in is irrelevant when I'm focused on my working. I'm working, right? But a lot
you're
of
self-motivated. You've got something you're pursuing, so you're focusing on getting it done.
That's right. A lot of people can't do that. Like a lot of people really struggle working from home because of all the distractions. It's such a break from their routine. So and that's obviously been exacerbated right now with.
It's I think it largely comes down to people's personalities, and so what we're seeing now is a whole lot of people facing a whole lot of uncertainty, which is psychological pressure and other things going on. And it's not just one change in life. If, for example, you were working at a company in normal times and this pandemic wasn't going on, and the company said, all right, we've got a change of policy. We are doing work from home for everybody. In fact, the interesting thing is I saw this happen because with IVT, we had most people working from our office in Croydon. So we had, I think it was about 25 people in that office. And then we had a couple of people working from home. We had 2 people in Ballarat, someone in Sydney. So we had, I think it was about 42 people altogether at peak.
Right.
But it was still very much this centralized model. Like we had in-person stand-ups every morning with the dev team, and you could stand up and shout and everybody in the office would hear you. And then when it was bought by AIS have a 100% work from home policy. They do have an office in Melbourne where they have meeting rooms and they can bring people in for presentations and those sorts of things, because you need some kind of a physical address to work from. And that's where they have in-person staff meetings and events.
Yeah.
But typically there will be maybe 2 or 3 people in that office at any one time, and everybody else is working from home. So what happened was that the staff that have been working for me in the office environment ended up going to a work from home environment, and it was a radical change. And some people just couldn't handle it. It didn't suit the way their brains work. They really want to be in an office surrounded by other people. They want the buzz of hearing what other people are working on and being able to just chat about stuff randomly.
Yeah.
So some people really do well in that that work from home setup, and some people don't. It comes down to how your own brain works, what keeps you engaged. But what's happening now is that we've got this thing where we're not just changing from working in an office to working from home, but we've also got all the kids at home because they're not going to school, and we've got everything else going on, and you can't visit your friends, and you don't have the social outlets that you would normally have of being able to go and meet people for social things.
Yep.
So it's
isolated as well. It's not just
it's a heightened situation.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay.
So for me personally,
sorry.
it suits me.
Suits me too. Always has. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's isolating. I like being able to, get out and see my friends, or I miss. I don't miss being in an office space, but it is isolating as a maker when you don't have people. You can't just lean over to someone and say, "Hey, can you just have a look at this?" And does this look right to you? Or any idea why this isn't working? It's that'd be nice sometimes, but not all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. I just saw a comment from John Spencer. I buy all my work from home monitors from John directly. That's true. So John Spencer, who you would see pop up in the comments here, is from the Melbourne Hackerspace. So Seon, you would know John. And when the IVT office was disbanded, I ended up with a garage full of former office equipment. So I had dozens of monitors and computers and all sorts of things, like a big box full of like USB headsets and things. And I wanted to get rid of a whole bunch of stuff. And John Spencer ended up buying some monitors from me. So his home setup now, and I think, in fact, his wife's home setup, used monitors that were formerly IVT monitors that came out of my garage.
Hope you got a good deal.
Of course. John's awesome.
Yeah. So I've got a question for you, and I think this will. I'm curious to know what everyone in chat is also doing as well. This came up because of a chat we had, John, like yesterday on Discord. So I don't have. It's been on my list for ages. I don't have any fire extinguishers here, right?
Yeah.
And which is a real big oversight, considering I've got a laser cutter out in the garage and I've got, stuff here that could easily catch on fire, whatever, when I'm working. So I'm curious to know what other people are doing with regards to things like that. But on an even bigger level, I'm curious to know, and I'm sure you know all the information about this because you've been doing this for so long, like the whole running a business from home thing, right, is probably not what, probably makers wasn't what they were thinking of when they were doing the whole, yes, it's okay to run a business from home. Like, we've all got stuff in our workspaces that are dangerous, that are things that you wouldn't, whether they're industrial quality or not, they're things that you normally would have in a workspace, not in a home space. And I'm curious to know what people do, like with regards to how do they protect those things like insurance, things like, I don't know, disclosure. Like, I'm just being honest, right? Like,
Sure.
do they like I've got, when I'm going to have a $30,000 pick and place in my office, hopefully next week, if it ever turns up. And that's something you don't have in a home. Like, how do I even declare that and ensure that in my house? Like, and is it even legal for me to have it in my house?
Yeah, that's a really grey area, talking about is it even legal, because here in Australia, and I assume in other parts of the world, we have zoning regulations. And so I live in this is a standard detached house in an urban area. I've just got houses around me. There are no factories nearby. This is a residential area. And the zoning restriction basically says that it's for residences. It's not for building factories and things. So if I wanted to knock down my house and build a factory here, the zoning regulations would just say, no, I can't do it.
Yep.
So there is this really weird gray crossover area where you're working from home and you're doing things on a smaller scale that you would normally expect to see in a factory. So the way I've done that is, in terms of insurance, I've got pretty much every insurance that seems relevant. So I've got an insurance broker, and we spoke to them about it and said, this is what the business is, and we've declared it. And so I've got, just off the top of my head, I may be missing something here, but I've got professional indemnity insurance, product liability insurance, contents insurance, and the contents, like the property contents insurance, we've declared a percentage of the house as being for work purposes.
Yep.
And I actually can't remember how specific we've been in terms of what's inside it. The interesting thing is that because I take so much video in here, if this house burned down, I could pretty much prove what I have, because I could just pull up video and say, look, this is what was in my lab.
Sure.
But we haven't specifically said to the insurance company, hey, I've got a laser cutter and I've got this.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
that's the interesting thing, right? I mean, I've got the same where, you know, I've declared a certain portion of the house like for work stuff, but what things am I allowed to have insured and in this space? And, you know, does declaring it open me up for other issues? You know, if something happens and I want to claim or whatever else, and then suddenly, well, hang on, you're not legally allowed to have stuff like that in the area you're zoned for. You know, like I'm also in a residential space. Like it's an interesting problem that I'm really scared to dig into because it might force me into a warehouse or a factory when I don't want to do it, right?
Yeah. You don't want to be told that you're doing something that you shouldn't. So the room that I'm in right now, the lab, is directly on the back of the garage. So just for the benefit of everybody else, Seon has been here, so he's seen this setup. What happened was that our house had a little carport on the end. There was a 2-car wide carport between the end of the house and the fence. And we knocked that down and did a really big extension, which is a garage that is 2 cars wide, and it's about 1.5 to 2 times as deep as a normal garage. So I've got a dirty workshop area at the back of it. And then behind that, it goes on for another 6 meters. So I've got I think it's a 6 meter by 5 meter, but it's a slightly odd shape workshop on the back of it. But this whole building was custom built as my workshop. And as part of that, what we did was put sound insulation through it. So it's sitting on a concrete slab. All of the walls are lined with insulation. And I specifically got soundproof bats so that if I wanted to do something like run a Dremel at 3 o'clock in the morning, nobody outside can hear it. So essentially I'm inside a little soundproof bubble at the moment.
Right. Okay.
And some noise does get in. These windows are not, are they double? No, they're laminated, but not double glazed. So the windows facing out over my backyard are not soundproofed, but the external walls and the ceiling is all pretty well soundproof.
Okay.
So part of that was, in the back of my mind was also this thing about, I don't want to be doing commercial stuff in here and have the neighbors aware of it. So as far as the neighbors are aware, I could be a drug dealer. I'm at home all the time. I go down to the post.
Whoa.
I don't have people visit the house at random times frequently, but I actually wonder sometimes, what do they think I do?
Sure.
Because I'm always just hanging around and walking down to the post office with a pile of packages every day. So yeah, I wanted it to be reasonably under the radar.
Yeah. My space is under the radar as well. It's at the back of the house behind the garage, but you know, often I'll open the garage door if I need to do some woodworking stuff. I'll move some tools out the front into the driveway, and I'm sure the neighbors can hear. They also work from home, but they have legitimate jobs from home. Like, you know, they don't require tools. So there's a few people commenting about the, you know, just tell the insurance company what you're doing type stuff. The issue for me isn't the insurance company. The issue for me is, by declaring what I'm insuring, does that open me up for issues with the government, right? With the laws that say what I can and can't do from home. It's not the issue of will I be covered or not, you know, will I get money from the insurance company or not?
Yeah.
The issue is, by declaring it, it's written, it's there, like it's in writing. And then what happens if, you know, I don't even know who the governing body would be, but Mr. Council man walks past and goes, "So what do you do in your garage? You know, come in and have a look."
Yes.
And they see all this stuff and they go, "Yeah, you can't do this at home." Like, that's what I'm worried about, right? Not the insurance specifically. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, an interesting counterpoint to this. So yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from. but I have seen people get away with things that blow my mind, and it makes me think no one cares about what I'm doing. Okay, so hopefully I won't get anybody in trouble here. And in fact, it's not a current situation. This is a past situation. My brother-in-law his job is CNC manufacturing. And by CNC manufacturing, I don't mean like a little desktop CNC machine. I mean CNC machines that are like the size of a caravan, big, big machines. And yeah, a few years ago, like the ones that cost more than my house. And a few years ago, he moved into a house that had an enormous shed out the back. The previous owner had run a trucking company or something, and they had this just enormous shed on a concrete slab. And he ended up buying a CNC machine. It was a Morosaki machine center. So, it was, I don't know, it was like a 20-ton machine. Required 3-phase power, obviously. And he had this set up in his shed, in his backyard, and was running the business from home doing CNC manufacturing. So, and these things are loud. Like, you've got to wear earmuffs when you're near them. They scream like a banshee, and they're cutting aluminium or steel at very high speeds.
Right.
And he did that for a couple of years with no problems. No one complained to the council. Like, no one came knocking on his door saying, "What the hell are you doing?" And he was making custom car parts and all sorts, aircraft parts and all sorts of things there. So his business then expanded, and he ended up renting a factory and bought more machines and hired more staff. And so his shed is now table tennis and darts and, all the things that a shed can be when it's just a fun space.
Yeah.
But for years, he had this enormous CNC machine running in it.
And I can't believe the neighbours never said anything.
Yeah, yeah. Like, the area that he's in is not as dense as where I am. The neighbours are a little bit more separated, and there are lots of trees and things around. But still, there were neighbours within, 50 metres or so.
Yeah, sound travel.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Cool.
So, okay. Yeah, he did that for years. And when I saw that, I just thought, me sitting here with a laser cutter and a soldering iron and 3D printer, no one's going to care.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Cool.
Yeah. So let's see what we're missing in the chat. So John just said, at least get a fire extinguisher or 3, unexpected maker. Yeah, so just yesterday, Seon and I were chatting about this exact thing. So I've got a couple of carbon dioxide fire extinguishers, because one of the things you have to keep in mind with laser cutters in particular, if you just grab a common fire extinguisher, like a dry powder extinguisher, and you spray it into the laser cutter, you'll destroy all the optics. So even if you manage to put a fire out quickly and you save the machine, you still got to replace everything, because all the mirrors will have powder all over them. Everything just gets wrecked. So one of the things I did very quickly after I got my laser cutter was I bought a carbon dioxide fire extinguisher, which you can safely use on a laser cutter, and it'll put the fire out and it won't damage the machine or the optics. So just last night, Seon and I were talking about that, and I think your plan is to get one of those, isn't it?
I want to get one of those for the garage, but I also want to know what the best one I should get for just in my workspace. Because I also don't particularly want to use a dry powder one in my workspace. And sure, I get to put out a fire if there's one, but I also have to then replace a whole bunch of equipment. And
you'd be cleaning up for weeks.
Yeah. So
powder gets everywhere.
Yeah. So like, I remember a while ago when I was looking at it, when I did nothing about it, there is a particular type of one that you can get that's suited for electronics and electronic equipment. But it wasn't CO2. There was another type.
Yeah.
And I remember, I can't remember what it was though, but I remember it being really expensive. Like, it was like 5 times the price of just a normal extinguisher.
Maybe halon or something like that. I think halon is what's used in data centers. Right. They typically have things that are like sprinklers, except that instead of spraying water, which would be really bad in a room full of servers, they dump halon gas into it, which extinguishes the fire.
Okay. Yeah, it might have been. It was a weird name. I can't remember what it was. Aaron Knox is saying.
Yeah. Oh, Aaron, Inogen. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, CO2 is only good for enclosed spaces. Like I wouldn't want to just be spraying that in here. I probably wouldn't do anything.
Yeah.
That'd be good for shooting directly into a laser if it was on fire. There's halogen ones apparently. So Inogen. Okay, I'll do some more research and I'm gonna have to bite the bullet and buy some. I've been very lucky so far, I have to admit, but probably jinx myself now, so I better do something about it.
Yeah. Oh, just going back to our previous conversation, there are a couple of comments here. Dodgy said, the neighbors dobbed me in for running a business from home. I showed them the thing was made from wood pieces at the time and told them this wasn't a business machine, and they were fine once they inspected. And then John said, John, for reference, had a huge CNC machine, took up like an entire garage. And he said, when I had a CNC in my backyard, I had no complaints for a few years until the guy who had spent 7 months building his house at odd hours finished and moved in. Yeah, funny about that. Yeah. Oh, that sucks. Yes.
And we can't roll on anymore, so I'm just reading.
It's funny. And Dodgy said, I'm still very mindful what hours of the day I operate it. Now it is quieter. Yeah. And I am conscious of that too. So just my CNC machine has been sitting mostly dormant for years, and I've just been using it over the last week, and it screams. Like running a CNC machine unenclosed makes so much noise. And even in this enclosed space with all the sound insulation, I wouldn't run that late at night. I'd only run that during business hours when I'm cutting aluminium.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, Mike just said, Mike O'Connor, hey, Mike, good to see you here. He said halogen is not allowed anymore. Okay. Interesting. Just shows how out of date my knowledge is. And John said fire blanket is not a bad thing to have too. Cool.
Yeah, that's probably a very good idea.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if we've got any more questions from the audience. So now that we have this opportunity with Seon here, and also I should just check, Seon, is the whole pick and place question taboo right now, or are you feeling a bit better about that?
Well, I bought a new one.
Yeah.
And I'm buying another charm high, but a bigger charm high. Bummer is it was supposed to ship on Friday, and I got the shipping at the machine with TNT and all the 7 boxes of feeders with DHL, because that was the cheapest way to do it, which was still horrifically expensive. I'll talk about that later if you want.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they weren't picked up on Friday. There was just the shipping paperwork, and now they're not being picked up till Monday, which I know it's only 2 days, but I'm now 3 weeks behind in my production. So those 2 days, they're hurting right now.
Yeah.
I'm really, yeah.
So just a little bit of, you can correct me if I get anything wrong. I'll give the very brief background for people that subscribe to my channel and don't subscribe to Seon. And I don't know why that would be the case. If that is the case, go and subscribe to Seon's channel, Unexpected Maker.
Your channel is much more interesting than mine.
So Seon had a desktop pick and place machine for quite a while, which he was using to make his tiny Pico boards. And production got to the point where that machine was no longer a good candidate. He needed to upgrade to something bigger, and ordered a Neoden S1, which seemed like the perfect solution. And it arrived, and it was in a non-working condition. And there's a whole drama around that we probably won't need to go into right now. But the end result is that the S1 ended up going back to the supplier, and he's had to order a different machine, so another Charm High, but a bigger model than what he was running previously. So, and unfortunately, the original Charm High was sold and sent off to someone else. So Seon is now
he's loving it. He's building boards
with
it.
Well, that's good to hear. That's the silver lining to this, I suppose.
Like I asked if I could buy it back from him, and he said no. So, yeah.
And then you said, can I sneak in and borrow it at night while you're not using it? And he said, no.
No, he offered for me to come down and use it, but yeah, it doesn't really work that way with a pick and place machine. By the time I would have reset up my Tiny Picos on that machine and recalibrated the whole machine for that,
Yes.
that in itself would have taken over a day, right? And then it wasn't viable. I've got
not practical.
Yeah, I've got thousands of books to build, not hundreds. So yeah, it just wouldn't have helped. But
certainly not if he was still wanting to use the machine as well. And switching backwards and forwards between two jobs is the killer.
Yeah, especially on a machine like that where you don't have feeders you can take off, right?
Yeah,
it's a real problem.
It's all manual.
Yeah. So Dodgy asked what I got. So I ended up buying the T560 P4, which is still classed as a desktop pick and place machine, but it's like 5 times the size of what I had. It uses external Yamaha CL feeders or clone feeders, up to 60 feeders, 68 millimeter feeders it can fit. It's got 4 heads instead of 2, but it's still basically using the same software and the same cameras and the same crap. Like, it's still a budget pick and place machine, so I'm going to have
scaled up.
Sorry?
But it's still the same basic system as your old one. It's just like a scaled up version.
Yeah, it's just scaled up. So it's going to be, it's much faster than what I had, but it's going to have the same precision issues. But I'll be able to do boards in one pass because of the 4 heads. I don't have to do a half and swap nozzles. And being able to remove the feeders is a huge win and time saver. So it means I can, because my other pick and place set here for, the last year, basically set up for Tiny Picos, and I could never do anything else on it. Or the only other things I could do on it would be a hybrid. So I could maybe place 3 or 4 parts on a board and the rest have to do by hand, because I could never take the Tiny Pico stuff off because it took too long to get it off and put it back on again. And I was always making Tiny Picos, right?
Yes.
So now I don't have to worry about that, because I can just pull feeders off and put them back on, and the parts are calibrated inside the feeder. So it's a much quicker process.
Yeah. Cool. While we were talking about pick and place, there was something that came up on, I can't remember. I'm in so many chats that I don't even know where it came up. That's right. It was in the pick and place project chat for the Melbourne Hackerspace. And there's been some discussion about high-speed pick and place machines and different feeder designs and things recently. And yesterday in there, I made a comment about some of the things that OpenPNP can do with QR codes. And a particular production line that I visited the last time I was in China. So, Seon, you went on the innovation tour with Vela, the last one that she ran, and I went on the one that was before that. So there have only been 2 runs so far. And I don't know if you went to the same factory. And the annoying thing is I'm trying to remember what the name of the factory was. It was... Oh, that's right, Hytera. Did you go to the Hytera factory?
No, we didn't go to Hytera, no.
Okay. At the time, I tweeted a really long thread about all the amazing things that I saw at the Hytera factory. And it kind of blew my mind about the possibility of what can be done with factory automation. This factory... I'm wondering where to start with this story and how much detail to go into. It might be a story for another time. But the objective with this factory was to make the entire factory a black box so that you could feed a design in one end and you get a finished product out the other. And part of the way they did that is by making the machines as flexible as possible and having a production line that has all of the parts ready for every product that they want to make on that line, and make the production line able to adapt to individual boards or panels as they travel through it. So the way they do this is each panel has a QR code which is laser etched onto it, which is the serial number of the specific device. So it's not just the product code, it's this actual serial number
of this PCB.
And as it travels through the production line management system is scanning that QR code, and it knows what the product is. So it populates it with the correct parts. and you can have multiple PCBs traveling through the production line at the same time, and it will be assembling each of them correctly. So
Yep.
there's no line setup. It's just you feed in the boards and you feed in the configuration files, which you've got the pick locations, and
Yep.
you get the board coming out the end.
Yeah.
And that was mind-blowing and what was really interesting to me was the amount of logging that they do for being able to later retrospectively look at how the board was produced.
Yep.
And what they did was so they've got a receiving area where they bring in all of their reels of parts. And so this room was a clean room with people wearing bunny suits and that sort of thing. So a manufacturer will supply them a whole box of reels of parts. Say they get reels of 1K resistors. What happens is that reel comes in and it gets a barcode on it, so they know the identity of that reel, and that identity is matched back against the shipment from the supplier, so they know who the supplier was when they received that reel, and they can manually
everything.
Yeah. So they then manually apply a test instrument to the first part on the reel, and they measure that the part is within spec and it is what it says it is. So they're making sure that they're not getting mislabeled parts or anything.
Yep.
And that then goes into their library. So then when the PCB goes through the production line, the machines all know which reels they have loaded in them because they can scan their codes as well. They can scan the code on the reel. So as it goes through the production line, it puts down a 1K resistor, and in the management system, it makes a record. I put down this 1K resistor that was part number 375 on this reel, and it went onto this PCB with this ID, and it knows where the reel came from. It knows what day they received it. It knows who tested it, who verified the values were correct. Yep. So the end result is that you get a PCB with a code on it, and by scanning that code, you can look up the history of every single individual part on the board all the way back to the manufacturer.
Absolutely.
So from a quality assurance point of view, it's just mind-blowing. So if they discover, for example, we got this particular batch of inductors that has a problem, they can look it up the other way and say, I want the serial number of every single PCB that contains an inductor that came off that reel, and they can do it.
Yep.
But the amount of insight they have is crazy.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's a very important step when you're talking about high quantity manufacturing, especially in a space where components are hard to come by, and you might have to switch components out between a list of 2 or 3 different preferred components for a particular board. Because let's face it, like any CM you go to these days, when you tell them these are all the parts on my BOM, they all require at least 3 alternative parts now. You know, maybe not the people, just in case they can't get something, there's a supply shortage or whatever else. And so all of those parts need to be validated, but you need to know which one of those versions went on which version of their board.
Mm-hmm.
Really important. Yeah.
That's right.
At my level, I don't need to, right? But sure. At other people, yeah.
And I've been bitten in the past. I mean, I've told this story in the past, so I won't go into it in great detail, but I had a problem with one production run many years ago where a 100 nanofarad capacitor, the reel ran out partway through the run of our boards, and an operator grabbed a reel, shoved it in the machine, and kept on going. But what they put in was 10 nanofarad capacitors. And normally that's not a problem. But in this case, the capacitor was used as part of a timing circuit for a reset line that delayed the reset line rising. And the result was that the boards failed if they powered up from cold. They would work if you powered them up and pressed reset, but they would not work from cold. And it took us a while to figure out what was going on, that this particular part on the board was 10 nanofarad instead of 100, and that it was timing critical. So that's the sort of screw up that can happen in any manufacturing, I suppose. But in this particular case, because it's a human operator that's making the decision about picking out the reel, looking at the label, they glance at it and they see 10 and they think, oh yeah, that's 100 nanofarad, and they shove it in. Then they just had a brain fart moment or something.
Yeah, that's an expensive thing for them to find and fix, right, for a CM.
Yeah.
It's in its interest to have better accountability than that. But that would have been a hard thing to track backwards, I guess, to work out what it was.
It took a while to diagnose that because it was only some boards out of the batch that had the problem. And the weird thing is that it passed testing because our test procedure for that particular board did not catch that edge case of that part of the board not working from power up, because the boards were always reset as part of the test process. And by the time it got to testing that function, the board had been powered up and then reset, and it worked. So it actually went onto the test jig, passed all the tests, and it was fine. And it was only when it got out into the hands of customers that we discovered there was a problem.
Yeah. Ouch. So Aaron Knox says that's called the golden thread.
Golden thread.
Yeah. Okay, that's a really cool name. I like that.
Yeah.
There's no gold in my office, let me tell you. It's all it's bronze thread. Yeah. Georgie asked me earlier on if there's any way I can increase the precision of my new pick and place machine. Not really. I had the discussion with Charm High, like directly about the cameras they're using. They're pretty crap cameras, and I could try to swap the cameras out with better cameras, but then like it's left like I'm going to potentially wreck their whole software pipeline. It's closed software. I'm not interested in putting open PnP on it. I'm not interested in having a pick and place project. I need a machine that sits there and works.
Yes. And
build boards with it, not tinker with it. So at least with this machine, I'm going into it knowing what to expect, right? Like I've put hundreds and hundreds of hours in my previous Charm High, so I know exactly what I'm going to get from this Charm High, and there'll be no surprises, right? And anything I can do to improve it, that's a bonus. But yeah.
You'd at the very least, all your calibration would be screwed up. So I don't think replacing parts on a machine like that is really a practical course of action.
No, not really. I mean, there are people that have done it. They put better cameras in their versions, but they've had to, either go to OpenPNP or they've had to, hack the firmware, and it means that they can't ever go forward if there's never an update. So I'm just not prepared to do that. Not right now.
Yeah. Right now, you just need those panels populated and get them out the door.
And there are many of them. It's ridiculous. The quantity I need keeps growing and growing. Every day that I'm not making boards, the number's getting bigger. So,
So Aaron just asked, does a new machine allow feeders on both sides?
Yes, it's 30 on each side. So it's a much bigger machine. I need access all the way around it. So I don't know where I'm going to put it right now. It actually doesn't fit through my door. So I'm going to have to, I'm hoping I can just remove the architrave around the doors. I'm not sure if people are going to be able to see.
Yeah.
There you go. That door all the way down there. Oop. I can't even, down there, right? Anyway, I think I need 30 millimeters is all I need, but I'm pretty sure it's going to have to be like 70 or 80. So I'm going to have to cut out some of that wall to get it through. I'm not looking forward to doing that because, I am looking forward to doing that because I can do it in about 5 minutes, a real hack job. I'm not looking forward to having to pay someone to come in to fix it afterwards.
Fixing it afterwards, that's the problem. Making holes is easy.
Yeah, because I can't leave a gap in the wall and having all the cold air and the dust and stuff in the garage coming in.
Yeah.
So, it's time. Look, I thought about if I'm going to do it, maybe I'll just put a bigger door in. The problem
for a double door.
Yeah, the problem is I've actually looked inside. I took the door out, and the framing, the thing that stops the door from opening all the way, is the framing of the wall.
Okay.
So I have to knock a big section of it out and pull out studs from the wall and get a whole new camera built. So again, it's if we weren't in lockdown and we just things were normal, whatever normal is, right? I could probably get a tradesman in and get it done in like 2 or 3 days. But it's not on the cards right now. Not with with lockdown still and the way things are. I don't know.
Yeah,
it makes sense to put a bigger door in.
Yeah, I'm very lucky in that respect. Before we did this extension, I put out a post, and this was, I think it was in the days before Twitter. I can't even remember. It was many years ago. I posted for suggestions. Basically, the thing was, okay, I'm building my dream home lab. What is the list of things I should do? And one of the excellent suggestions was large access. So I have double doors into my lab directly from the back of the garage, which means if I want to bring in large machinery, it's through the garage, straight ahead through the back, and then double doors that open up. So I've got, I think it's about 1.7 meters or something wide access through into the back of my lab. And most of the time, one of those doors stays closed. I only ever use one.
Yeah.
But if I ever need to, I can open both and then just bring stuff straight through.
Yeah. It was I should have. I mean, at the time, I never knew I was going to be doing anything like this when I.
No, that's right.
Garage renovated, right? I was making games here, and
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, the biggest thing you'd have to bring through is maybe a couch, but
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, Mike O'Connor mentioned that there's no limit on in Victoria on trade people and doing work. That is true, but finding people that will do the work and that will do the work at a reasonable price right now is a problem, is what I'm finding. There seems to be this thing where everyone is increasing their prices and they're either unavailable or, like I had some, I was speaking to someone about some garage door stuff, and, I was looking at 4 or 5 weeks wait to get someone, or they can come next week at double the price type thing. Right? Yeah. So the limit for me isn't legalities or, or lockdown, but more so that the business effect of the lockdown. Yeah,
that secondary thing. Dodgy just said, after I moved back to Queensland from Sydney, I started helping a mate with his gym business. You would be amazed how many times people build gyms and don't allow for equipment to be put in. Yeah.
Yeah. Make that mistake once though, right?
Yes. Yeah. There's a friend of mine up in Canberra built a house. I think it's about 5 years ago. And he wanted to put a really big laser cutter in upstairs, and they actually put it in while the house was being built. So they had the first floor of the house. The second floor didn't have its roof on yet. They craned in the laser cutter and put it in place and then finished building the house over the top. So if he ever wants to get it out again, I don't know what they'd do.
The roof on a hinge. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So just quickly, Cabletti, I don't know how to pronounce that. I apologize. Asked about using local CMs. Yeah, the economics do not work at all for local CMs, unfortunately. It's just, not an option for me. I'd end up losing many dollars per board for every board I sold. Yeah. What about ceiling height issues for...
I don't think that's an issue, really.
Tie. Okay, that's how you pronounce it. That's quite clever.
Yeah. Yeah, for the sort of equipment that Seon and I need, ceiling height isn't really such a problem. It's basically equipment that comes up to sort of chest height or maybe eye height, not much higher than that. Even a large pick and place machine is sort of just over your head.
That's right. Yeah. It's definitely a width and a weight thing. Like I was trying to work out how many people I'd have to invite over to my house to move a 1,200 kilogram pick and place machine around my garage.
Yeah. And then what floor loading you would have.
Yeah. Like, it's all concrete in there, but how would I even get it off the pallet? You know what I mean? It's funny, when I got the S1 delivered, they just assumed that I'd have a pallet jack here. Like, how many people have a pallet jack at home? I don't have a pallet jack. So, I had to pay extra to get a pallet jack with the delivery. Anyway.
Yeah, or a little forklift. A long time ago, when I used to spend a lot of time messing around with cars, I ended up doing some work on a car that was at a factory, and they happened to have a forklift there. And I tell you what, getting motors in and out of cars is so much easier when you have a forklift. I've lifted lots of motors in and out with an engine hoist,
right? Where
you just hand crank the thing and the arm lifts up, and you can certainly do that. But with a forklift, you just press the button and you can lift whatever weight you need.
But how do you get the the prongs out afterwards when you put it down. Like,
Oh no! What you do is you chain it. So you have the prongs above the engine bay, and then you run chains down and bolt it onto the engine block, and then you can just lift the engine straight up out of the engine bay. Yeah, so much. Some things are so much easier with a forklift.
I didn't know you were a rev head in a previous life.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've wasted way too much time and money messing around, specifically with rotaries. I used to like rebuilding rotaries. I've had a few RX3s. Right. In fact, I've had an RX2, RX3, RX4. I did actually buy an RX5, but I never drove it. I just bought it for the parts. RX7, in fact, had one RX7 and had an RX8. So I think I've had most of them except the classics like the R100.
Wow, RX8's a nice car. Well, the current model RX8 is quite nice, but yeah, never had a rotary engine car. Never been into cars really. So I appreciate the look of a really nice car, but I've never been a.
Yeah, I'd love to do an electric car conversion. I think that would be an interesting project. Although a lot of that is more mechanical than electronic. It's one of those projects that crosses over between electronics and the mechanical side of it as well. I'm not so good with the mechanical side of it, but it's fun. Like, I just do it because it's interesting. But can't do everything.
Well, so Daryl mentioned my sister had a baby grand delivered to her house with lots of steps. One big delivery guy carried down alone.
What?
How big was this guy?
Must have been Thor.
Yeah, wow.
Oh,
that was a baby grand. I don't know. Wow.
Yes, one very big delivery guy.
Dodgy's electric trike.
Yeah,
sorry.
I haven't seen that. No, Dodgy. Where can we find more about your electric trike? Maybe post about that in Discord. That'd be really cool to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talking about electric trikes and cars, this is getting so far off any topic. There was, I don't know if anybody else here saw, but there was a new world record set for the electric, I think it was 1/8 mile or was it quarter mile, maybe a week or two ago. There was an electric drag car that reached 200 miles per hour in like 3 seconds or something. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's spooky. And the video of it's kind of weird because when you watch with things like top fuelers and door slammers, they just make so much noise that it's like the end of the world. The sound feels like it's enough to kill you. But with electric drag cars, they sort of whine and there's a bit of tire squeal and they just vanish over the horizon. It's very strange to watch. Oh, Mako just said, John, do you have a Discord server? Yes, I do.
Well, John is that. So a couple of things. So Aaron Knox asked before a couple of times how the water cannon was going. But before you answer that, though, he also asked if anyone watched the SpaceX launch, the Demo 2, the manned launch. I watched a bit of that. And yeah, I mean, still obviously ongoing. It's going to take them another 12 hours or 15 hours or something to get to the space station. But that no one got blown up. So that's I
I watched a bit of that as well before this live stream. One thing that is kind of odd about the Dragon is how much it looks like a set on a sci-fi show. It doesn't look real. Like after a lifetime of watching space stuff, it's usually very industrial. It's very cramped and complicated, and they've with Dragon, they've really gone out of their way to keep aesthetics as a primary issue. So it's very weird seeing the inside of a spacecraft that has so much room physically, and everything is white and clean, and it just looks fake.
Yeah, doesn't it? These really nice big touch screens and little things. It's like a piss take on.
Yes.
you know, like, yeah, for those that don't know, I don't know if that's an Australian expression or whether it's global or not, but like taking piss out of something, a piss take, yeah. It doesn't look right. It's just the way they're even sitting there, right, in their spacesuits and doing things. But it's real. It seems real.
Yeah. Calamid said, it looks like a front, if you know what I mean. Yeah, it does just look like sitting on a soundstage somewhere with green screens for the windows. Those sorts of things are interesting to watch because they happen if you're watching something like a trip up to the ISS. There is a whole lot of activity very quickly for a few minutes, and then a whole lot of nothing for a while, and then interesting activity again at the end. Cable Tie said, "Is that a conspiracy theory you're working on?" No, no. I do believe we went to the moon. I do. This stuff is real.
Yeah.
I get people asking me fairly often about whether any of that stuff is real, and for those of you that don't know, I did actually work on a satellite project a few years ago. There was the ArduSat project, went into orbit. Whoa, I've got to think back. Must be like 7 years ago now. 2 satellites went into orbit that were carrying payloads that I designed, and they stayed in low Earth orbit for about 4 months. And I had an amateur radio set up, so I actually got my amateur radio license specifically for this purpose. And I had a radio set up here. I've got an antenna up on the roof of this building, and I could personally receive the transmissions from the satellites as they passed overhead. So it's one of those things where I designed the PCBs and had them manufactured. They got sent off to JAXA, the Japanese Space Agency, where they were integrated into the rest of the satellite. And then they were taken up to the International Space Station on HTV-4, on the HTV-4 mission, and then went out into orbit. But for me personally, what I found really interesting was closing that loop where I had been sitting, in fact, right here in this corner where my computer is now, and on this very computer, I designed the PCBs that went into space. And then I sat here and listened to the radio transmissions, the transponder coming back, giving it status reports with nothing else in between. It's not like I was watching secondhand reports of a launch. The antenna on the roof of my house was receiving a signal from the satellite that I designed. And that was a totally surreal experience. But for me personally, it also just confirmed, hey, this is real. Like, things really are up there. This is not just stuff being done on a soundstage.
Yeah.
So I've personally verified that, yes, we build stuff, it goes into space. It really is up there.
And then what happens with them?
Well, in the case of ArduSat-X and ArduSat-1, they burnt up in the atmosphere.
Oh, they did? Okay, cool.
Yeah. And so I picked up the very last transmission from, I didn't hear ArduSat-1 on its last pass. I picked up ArduSat-X on its last pass just before it was destroyed. Because the position of satellites is tracked very accurately. There are services that are, it's important to avoid collisions and things, basically. So the position of thousands of objects in Earth orbit are being tracked constantly, and you can get a thing called a TLE, which is a 3-line entry. Or 2-line entry? I can't remember now. It's a definition of the orbital parameters of an object. So this is a standardized format that allows you to get the exact location of any object in orbit at any time, and you can forward and backward project it. So you can say, on this particular date at this time, it's going to be in this location. And using that information, you can plot degradation of the orbit, and you can predict when it's actually going to touch the atmosphere. And then once it touches, it dies. TLA, 3-letter acronym, yeah. 2-line, thanks, Gordon. So TLE is 2-line, and it dies very quickly. Once the spacecraft starts touching the atmosphere, the drag that it causes makes it decelerate, which then makes the orbit decrease, and it's just it's a cascading, it's a compound failure basically. So once it touches the atmosphere, it's all over very quickly.
So did you get to say your goodbyes then?
Well, I kind of, I didn't have privileges to transmit to it. That was all being coordinated by the ground station, by mission control. But I personally sat here and thought, oh, well, that's the end of their life. It's sad. But I heard one of the last transmissions ever from one of them.
Nice. Cool. That's a nice end.
Yeah. Ecognito said ETLA is extended 3-letter acronym. That's classic. Gordon asked, do I still have a call sign? It's probably been unassigned. It was VK3FADO, but I didn't extend my registration. I missed a renewal at some point. So right now that call sign is probably defunct.
Aaron wants to know if either of us if we had the opportunity, would go into space on a space rocket.
I didn't need any time to think about that.
Yeah. The short answer is yes. The long answer is no. Yeah. I want to, yes. Is it the right thing for my family? No. So, yeah.
Yes, that's right. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. My needs come secondary now too. Yeah. Once you got a family. Yeah.
It certainly does change things. Many years ago, I had the idea that if my company was ever successful enough and I sold it for a ridiculous amount of money, then I'd spend the $20-odd US million and go up to the ISS for a few days. But that didn't happen.
It's a nice plan though. Yeah. So I got a question for you.
Sure.
Do you think we can find anything electronics to talk about?
Oh, good question. We're chasing space squirrels at the moment.
Squirrels. That's a good one. Well, I'm blaming Aaron for that one. He sent us on this tangent. So the water cannon. How's the water cannon going?
Oh, okay. No real dramatic things to show since last time. You can just see the corner of it there. And in fact, I saw a comment earlier from Simon, who is my customer that I'm doing this for. So he's in the chat here somewhere. There's nothing much else to show right now. Since the last live stream, the thing is that I'm very conscious of the fact that this is a commercial project and it's not open source. So this is Simon's, it's not mine. And I really don't have any rights to make decisions about what I disclose about it. And after the last week's live stream, I was chatting to Simon and he said that he'd thought about this as well and decided that it's worth highlighting the made in Australia aspect of it, the fact that this is something that a local business, so he's a local business, I'm a local business, and we're working on something that is a product that's going to be going out into the market, which is a very cool thing to be promoting. We're all doing it right here. But so in general, he's happy for me to talk about it, but always in the back of my mind is I don't want to overstep and show things that might cause him commercial difficulties. Yeah. So, So I'm certainly not showing things like the circuit board designs and that sort of stuff. But just in a general sense of showing this is the water cannon and it's working to this stage and things are going well. I mean, I can show that. Cool.
So I've got a question for you. How is your Pi rack going? Since you've
Yeah, so you're talking about the rack mount thing with the Raspberry Pi in the back and all the sockets for the light switch connections.
Yeah.
That is...
Has that progressed any further?
It kind of has. I'm just going to take this out so I can reach something.
Sure. But the water cannon would stop a fire in the laser cutter in a hurry. Sure.
Okay, so nothing really dramatically different here. This still looks the same as the prototype, so the screen and the buttons and things. I've got to do new metalwork for this. Probably the only thing that is different that people may not have seen is an updated version of the Raspberry Pi hat, which has a voltage regulator module on it, and it's got connections there for I2C, so that can connect to an OLED directly on here, and it takes power over Ethernet, so you can run power over Ethernet into here, and it'll power up the Pi. Now, the difference is this is a revised version of what people have seen previously because it's got this little IDC connector on it, and that is the connector that will go through to the front panel display and the big bank of RJ45 sockets that will be in the front of it, and that is working. So I've been kind of ticking along slowly with that project in the background, but my really big problem right now is that I've ended up too fragmented again. This happens regularly. I end up chasing too many shiny squirrels, and they all run in different directions. Yeah. And eventually I just need to say, I'm going to narrow down the number. So I've got to focus on something, finish it, and reduce the number of things I'm doing in parallel. So at the moment, this is kind of idling. One of the things that I really wanted to do, in fact, Seon, this would be a very interesting thing to talk to you about. And we've discussed it a little bit in the past as well. So one of those many loose ends that I've been wanting to finish up is the ESP programming interface. I see the pain on your face.
Give it up. Give it up.
No, I'm not giving up. I'm doing this for my own use, even if it doesn't go anywhere else. But right now, this is a loose end. And on the live stream last week, Aaron very generously donated some funds to push this up my to-do list a little bit. So thanks, Aaron. And so the very brief background here is that when you are designing a project with an ESP8266 or ESP32, you can put onboard USB onto it so that you can flash it, which is exactly what Seon has done with the Tiny Pico board. So he has onboard USB. And in future, that's going to be even easier with the ESP32S2, which has its own onboard USB. So it won't even need an external USB to serial converter. But the vast majority of projects at the moment, you need to either have a programming header on it in order to allow you to put the ESP32 or ESP8266 into programming mode, or you need to put your own USB to serial converter and USB socket on it, which is extra stuff that you have to do in the project. So the reason for doing this tiny little board is to make an external programming adapter that takes care of the auto reset. So it has GPIO 0 and the reset pin, along with ground, power, TX, and RX. And then all you have to do on your project is put on a 6-pin header, and then whenever you want to flash it, you plug this little module into it, you've got USB, and then you can reflash it. So the big issue is what pinout to use on this. And I've gone through a few different versions, and I think Seon has put some thought into this in the past as well.
Yep.
I know that things like the Tiny Pico have USB on it directly. Yep. Do you have any projects at the moment that have a programming header?
So my Nano doesn't have a Tiny Pico. So it doesn't have USB on it.
Yep.
So for those that don't know, my Nano is a castellated version of my Tiny Pico. It's not going to focus. So actually, no, that's not true. Sorry, this does have a USB chip on it, but no USB port.
No socket.
Yeah, my original Nano didn't have the USB at all, and I actually built this little guy, which is my program I had. And you actually put pogo pins on the end of it, but I took them off and I put just some cables right now because I've been using this on my S2 boards for the time being while they're still fixing USB.
Yeah.
But I had a thought, though. I had a thought last week when you were talking about that again. And I had my hands full. I was building boards, so I couldn't type.
Sure.
And then I forgot to get in touch with you during the week. So I'm going to throw a spanner in the works for you.
Okay.
Now that it almost looks like you've decided the right way you want to go.
Yep.
And tell you that you should have made it modular, where instead of having header pins on it like you've got,
yep,
it should be an IDC connector or something on it with everything broken out. And then you got your one board and you've got a different board that plugs in that has different pin outs depending on which one you want. So if you want to have three...
Let me open Eagle.
Is that what you've done?
Yes.
Like, yes! Okay. Because then it doesn't matter. You build the one board once and you just build adapter boards and people can use what they want. If you want 5 volts, you put the 5-volt adapter in. If you want 3 volts, you do this one. If it's a different order, you plug this one, right?
Yep.
Oh, I'm glad you did it.
Well, what I've done may not be quite what you have described, but I wanted some flexibility. So I've got to find it. Why do I have so many Eagle projects? I need to start categorizing them. It takes me so long to find anything. So is that the one? No, that's not it. Yes, that's right. It was under E for ESP.
E for program.
Yeah, I've got to scroll back through pages and pages of project lists. ESPF, here we go. So I'm going to have to switch over to sharing my desktop. And so I'll show this to you in 2 stages. Can I do desktop here? What's this? Share a screen.
Yep.
Okay. How do I pick which screen I want to share?
You'll do that when you tell it, and then you can click on it to make it visible or not.
Okay. So I want to, there it is, share screen. I'm still learning about how open. I've got to allow the thing to get access to it.
Mac OS.
Oh no, I'd have to quit out of Chrome in order to allow it to see the desktop.
Oh,
it's a security restriction. So, hang on. Maybe it's going to let me. Oh, it's let me. Awesome. Okay.
Yay.
Hopefully everybody can see that. So this is the adapter module, which I went through this whole naming thing. So I ended up calling it ESP Flasher. And what this does is include the CP2102N and the auto reset circuit. So you've got USB-C coming in, and then it's still got that 6-pin header. So we've got ground, TX, RX, 3.3 volts, reset, and IO 0. But what I've done is also made this little thing, this board. Now it's a little bit hard to tell looking at it in Eagle like this. I might see if I can pull it up in Fusion 360. But what this does is provide a female header on the top, so a socket, which plugs into the bottom of the module, and then it breaks it out into the other format. So there's an IDC header here. So there's a 2x3 IDC header in standard 2.54 millimeter. There's the same thing in 1.27 millimeter, and there is a 6-way pin header in 1.27 millimeter. So what you can do is use any of the 4 header types on your project, and then with this adapter board, the interface module will work with any of them. And it'll be possible also to make other types of adapter boards and not change the original module.
Okay. That's
so I don't think that's quite what you were describing.
Right. No, because I mean that's great. That gives you a flexibility of adapters, but you're still stuck to the 3.3 volt route, like where my programmer passes 5 volts, not 3.3 volts.
Yeah.
Because all of my boards have 3.3 volt regulators on them.
Yes.
And all of my boards have a way of getting 5 volts into it. So I went for the 5 volt route.
Yeah.
Like
So at the moment, I'm not exposing 5 volts on my little module, and I think that's probably the one thing that's missing that you would need in order to make an adapter that would fit your boards.
Yeah. But see, this adapter here, like if you were exposing 5 volts, and so instead of having the 5-pin header, you'd have 6 or whatever it was, 6, you'd have 7. Couldn't see what it was. Then you could just allow the adapter, like, whatever you plug into it, to change which one you're using.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Yeah, whatever. Anyway, cool.
Yeah.
But I like that adapter. That solves the problem of, whether you're using a 1.27 millimeter pitch or 2.54, and IDC is really handy. Like, there's nothing worse than having to get a whole bunch of DuPont cables and connect them all up and then connect them all up.
That's right. While I'm here, so I've just gone into Fusion 360. As some people will have probably seen, I've just been doing a major rebuild of my pick and place machine. So where is it? Somewhere in here. See if I can find the part. It's a little bit out of date now because so right now I'm chasing another squirrel by showing this to you. Oh, here we go, head plate.
But you decided you're not sticking with the head plate you just made, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to change it. In fact, I've already started. So this is the design for the head plate that I just made, and it's got it's got 3 of these linear rails on it. This assembly you see on the right is a solder paste dispenser. So that whole plate can move up and down. The entire dispenser moves up and down, and then there is a rail on top. Normally there would be a syringe sitting in here. So this fitting up here holds the top of the syringe plunger, and then the rest of the syringe sits in here. Then there's a motor in here with a drive rod. And then there are a couple of, this was my big mistake. I was going for these stepper motors to control the Z-axis on each nozzle individually, but it turns out that these stepper motors are too slow. Yeah, they're crap.
Yeah.
They're too slow if I drive directly off the shaft. The rotation just isn't quick enough, so the head moves very slowly in the Z-axis. If I put an arm on it, which was my intention, to increase the rate of motion, then it doesn't have enough torque. Right. So I'm scrapping that. But anyway, that's chasing squirrels. Let's get back to what we were looking at before. So in modules, I've got, oh yeah, this is the ESP flasher. So this is that little adapter module. So that plugs into the bottom of the programmer, and then it just gives you the same connections for IDC and things. And I personally find that it can be a little bit precarious to have a module that plugs in, sits on the top of a board with just pin headers, and then a USB cable coming into it, because the cable itself can get caught on things and drag. It can end up pulling your project around. I'm going to switch back to a normal 2-screen split view. When you've got stuff on the bench, it can just be a little bit too precarious and ends up being knocked.
Yep.
Doing something like using an IDC cable, the same way that a USB ASP works when it connects to an Arduino. You've got the Arduino on the bench, you've got your programmer on the bench, and a little IDC cable between them. I just find that's much more convenient because you don't get the pressure of the USB cable trying to twist your board into odd shapes and things.
Right.
So
it's also clean, which means people can't put them in back to front or not easily.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I quite like using IDC cables for programming headers and those sorts of temporary things. And yeah, as you say, it only goes in one way, so you really don't have to think about it. You just plug it in and you know it's good.
Yeah.
So for my own projects, I'm going to be using more of the IDC connectors. In fact, the water cannon project has an IDC connector on it for this purpose, and so does the one of the prototypes of the air quality sensor.
Yeah.
Now,
I use the 1.27 pitch SWD headers for like on my tiny and on my Reflow Master boards.
Yep.
You can see just there. But these are just one-time use to get a bootloader onto the Sambi 21s. So I don't actually put the sockets in there because the sockets are quite expensive. Even buying them on AliExpress, assuming that they ever turn up, they're still quite expensive. So what I've done is my programmer for this is just got the I cut one of the cables. Sorry, I put the. Do I have it? Hang on, I'll show you.
All right.
It's a hack job, total hack job. So I've got my Atmel Ice, and then on the end of the cable, I've actually got the connector, and I broke the edges off like what I'd solder in, right? And so then when I'm flashing it, I can just plug this in. Let's see if I can get it in on camera.
Yeah, and then
right,
give it a push.
Yeah, just put my thumb on it when I'm programming it, and I don't have to waste a connector.
Yep. I have a container here for exactly that purpose. This is my dongles container.
Right.
It's got programmers and jumpers and stuff in it, and I think I have same sort of thing. One of these somewhere. Normally I have one of these with, oh look, here's a dodgy thing. This is a 2x3. So basically it's a standard 0.1 inch pitch and a 2mm pitch soldered together. So what I can do is just plug that in and do the same thing. I can then just shove that into the holes on the target board. And I've got different sizes and all sorts of little dodgy converters and things like that. Yeah, I think that's it sounds dodgy, but I think that's a reasonable way to do it. It's basically just like DIY pogo pins.
Absolutely. You know, it's I mean, I've thought so many times about building a proper flashing jig that I can just put this on and press a button to flash it. But I keep talking myself out of it because I keep, I have that whole conversation about, seriously, it's too late now. How many more of these am I really going to sell? Like, am I going to go through all that effort of making my life easier, right? So I don't. And then I sell a whole bunch more. And then I have that conversation again. And then I go, nah, it's not going to happen. So, like all my new products are building test jigs for and flashing jigs. But, yeah, stuff like this, it's just easier to keep going with this hack. Yeah. And it works fine.
Cool. I'm just going to switch back to this briefly. So this is the programming module, but just in Fusion 360, because it makes a bit more sense looking at it like this than it does looking at it in Eagle. And this is mostly for Aaron's benefit because he seems to be excited about this. And this just plugs into the header on the target board, gives you USB-C, handles all of the reset and everything, and brings down the signals, but with 3.3 volts instead of 5 volts, which is what Seon preferred for his board. So Seon, one thing I'm interested in is you have onboard 3.3 volt regulators and you're accepting 5 volts onto your board.
Yep.
Is there anything to stop you accepting 3.3 volts and feeding it directly into the rail? Is that going to cause problems with your voltage regulator?
No, not at all. Not at all. All my boards support a 3-volt pin after the regulator. That you can, people can power the boards directly from 3.3 volts. Just for my use, the reason I went the 5-volt route is because all of my boards have, the expectation that at some point you're going to plug USB into them, whether you're powering it from USB and or flashing it from, or just powering it from 5 volts. Because all of my boards have battery PMICs on there, like so you can charge batteries and use batteries, and you can't charge a battery from 3.3 volts. It's got to be from 5. Yes. So it makes sense for me to do it that way. But if I had a board that didn't have any battery management on it, it wouldn't make any sense for me to add 5 volts unless there was USB support, for flashing and stuff. So
in that situation, you could just use a header like what I've got here with 3.3 volts being supplied by the programmer.
absolutely. But what I'd never have on my board though is a place for me to plug it into, right?
Yes.
I mean, so how many pins is it? Is it 5 or 6?
6.
6, right? So like 6 pins on any of my boards. Like if you look at the size of my don't have a tiny pico lying around, right?
The Tiny Pico is tiny. For those of you who haven't actually seen one, Seon might be about to pull one out. They are ridiculous.
I don't have room to stick 6 pins on this thing for to put a programmer in it, right?
Yeah.
And definitely not on my Nano, because it's designed to be a castellated module. So that was the real thing for me, and that's why I went originally from my programmer that this were 1.27 mil pogos, is because it was a very small amount of space to flash with. Yeah. So I'm probably not the target market for your programmer, because none of my stuff has it's all got flashing stuff on it.
Yeah.
But I definitely think there's a huge market for a really good programmer out there. I mean, how many of us have got drawers full of FTDI type programmers? They've never really been suitable for ESP flashing. Before I forget, I've got a question for you. Can you go back to your programmer?
Yeah, sure. So go back to this and to that one.
Yeah, so I've got a design change you need to make on that. Really important one. You need to drop your board lower. So I did the same thing when I was playing with this is my charge.
So you're talking about the problem right here.
With the plastic, yes.
Yes.
So that is really unstable. Like people are going to bend or crack solder joints when they try to plug that in. So what I did with mine is I actually made my board lower so the plastic sits against the PCB.
Yep.
And that is 100 times more, 100, okay, I'm just guessing, whatever. However many times more mechanically stable having that plastic there.
I'm going to switch the view back because you're in a very small view there. Sorry. That's better.
So you can see here that on this version, oh gosh, my camera's not focusing. I've got the plastic is sitting against the PCB, not below the PCB.
Yes.
What I found was, I'm trying to find the previous version. I don't know if I've got it here. I've got a box full of PCBs. And, come on. No. Anyway, the previous version I had, the header was sitting lower like yours does, and the plastic for that was sitting underneath. And what I found was whenever I was plugging it into the breadboard, when I was testing it, it was eventually it got quite loose like this. Yep. So for longevity point of view, you want to drop that PCB down.
Yep. Cool.
Yep.
That's a good point. So part of my original reasoning for doing this was that I wanted to have a programmer that I could use with a son-off. And I was thinking in terms of minimizing clearance. So what I was actually thinking of doing was this area where it just says ESP flasher. I was thinking of removing that part of the PCB to make it more L-shaped.
Can't see it. You need to share the screen.
Sorry. So the bottom left corner of this PCB, there's nothing important there except a label. Yep. So I was thinking of cutting all of that away to make the header itself be protruding down more away from the main body of the PCB. And then also possibly you could bring the PCB underneath it as you suggested. So it would end up looking like an L. And that would give it more clearance to be able to get into a target board which has parts on it already, because you don't want to have the body of the PCB foul against other things that are around the programming header.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so there are some mechanical optimizations that I could definitely do there. Yeah. But this project is one that has dragged on for more than a year, I think. And it's got to the point where I just need to get it out there and be using it myself and have other people providing feedback like this so that it can then be iteratively improved. But it's at the state at the moment where the project is going nowhere because I haven't released it because I keep changing the design.
So is this something manufactured overseas?
No, I think I just do it myself.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is doing it yourself, this is going to be a pain, but you should also, something I was considering if I do actually manufacture these is gluing the header on as well to the PCB.
Yep.
As well as the solder joints. But that's an easy thing to ask a CM to do. It's a painful thing to do yourself.
Yeah.
So
yes. Yeah, I've done that myself. I'm in the habit, it's not the best solution, but I'm in the habit of using super glue in this sort of thing. So if I put a header on a board, I will often, in fact, I wonder if I've got one somewhere around. Oh, okay. Well, this particular board is a good example of exactly the problem you are talking about. So this is a USB to serial adapter. Oh, the camera is in a different position. So we've got USB coming in on this side, and it's FTDI header equivalent on this side, and then you can switch either 3.3 volts or 5 volts. So what I'm talking about with this is kind of almost a variation on this design. But this PCB, it's a little bit hard to see here, has notches on the end, and it overlaps the body of this. In fact, let me see. I'm going to switch back to single screen mode, so you're going to disappear for a moment, but hopefully this will let me show it more clearly. So the connector is lying against the PCB, and it's soldered in on here. But on my own, I use these for my own purposes. What I normally do is just drop some super glue in here to hold that connector against the PCB, so it's really rigid, because over time it tends to just bend away, as you say, become a bit floppier.
Yeah, and the issue with that is you might get a crack in the solder joint that's not really visible to the eye, and all of a sudden it will start becoming intermittent, and you won't understand why it's not working sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, so I just want to get this out.
So just do it.
Yeah, I'm doing it. In fact, the PCBs are in transit right now from China.
Okay,
for both this module and the adapter module, which gives it the options for the IDC headers and things. So hopefully these are on an aeroplane right at this very moment. They shipped supposedly on Thursday, I think, or Friday. I can't remember.
Okay.
But it's probably one of those situations where they lodged the shipping paperwork and then DHL haven't picked it up yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, with luck, sometime in the next week, I will get those boards.
Cool. So there are a couple of questions. Just quickly.
Yeah.
A couple of questions come up. Aaron's asked a couple of times about RRP for the board. What do you think you're going to potentially sell them for?
I don't know. That is really tough. And in fact, this is probably a good conversation to have with you. I don't know if it's a conversation we want to have in public.
Okay.
Talk about margins and things.
Okay, let's hold that question there just for a second, because it is a really interesting problem.
Yes.
For sure. But Peter wants to know, absolutely crazy question, what market is this board targeting, considering there's so many cheap Chinese programmers already work? I'd question that there aren't so many cheap Chinese programmers out there, because a normal cheap Chinese programmer like an FTDI style one won't work with an ESP32, not unless you do the whole boot reset sequence and stuff to kind of get it working. From my experience, I've not found many cheap Chinese ESP32 specific programmers out there that have auto reset and stuff on them. So have you seen any, John?
No. So what Peter is probably talking about there are the standard USB to serial adapters.
Yeah.
Oh, what? Aaron?
Done it again.
Aaron.
Yes, Aaron wants one desperately.
Yes, I think I will be sending at least one to Aaron. That's amazing. Thanks, Aaron. Okay. I think what Peter is talking about is standard USB to serial adapters. And yes, you can buy those for like $2 on AliExpress or less. They're cheap and easily available. The fundamental problem is that those don't handle the auto reset requirements of an ESP8266 or ESP32 board. And so what I'm trying to do here is come up. So what you can do And in fact, what I did on some of my early ESP8266 projects was put an FTDI type header on it. And then you can use the standard USB to serial converter, but you still have to hold down GPIO 0, press reset, let go of reset, and then keep holding GPIO 0 for a few seconds, and then you can load your code onto it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people are doing, but it's a pain. So the purpose of this specific board is to provide a convention. I won't use the word standard, but a convention for a header that you can put onto an ESP board that takes care of the auto reset. So it has GPIO 0 and reset exposed on it. And then the auto reset circuitry can be on the programmer and not on the target board. So what you can do is plug this into your target board, plug in USB, click upload in your IDE, and the code will end up on the target. You don't have to worry about holding down GPIO 0 and pressing reset and all of that rubbish. It does it all. And unfortunately, the FTDI header does not handle that. You can't do it. We have to come up with a new standard set of pins that we're going to use for that purpose. And so this module is just my implementation of, so what this comes down to, if I switch back to here, the important thing here is not really so much this module, which is the USB to serial converter part of it and the auto reset circuit. The important thing is this header. And if more people use the same header on their projects and people can make their own converter boards, that's fantastic. But the critical thing is to get people using a standard header on everything. And I won't go into the huge backstory of this now because there's a lot to it, but what I tried to do with this was take this as an extension of the header that is currently on most Sonoff modules, and then extended it by adding the reset and GPIO 0 so that you can use this with a Sonoff, or you can use it with your own projects by adding those 2 extra pins.
Yeah.
So to answer Peter's question, it's no, you can't just go out and buy a cheap adapter that will do this. In the future, hopefully, people will make cheap adapters that do this, but right now you just can't get them. And following on from Seon's point about the programming jigs for things like the Tiny Pico, this is an application of this module. So what you can see here is a PCB that has a header on the side of it that accepts the programmer. So this particular flasher has this 6-pin header on here, and on this PCB, it's got a matching 6-pin header. And then this is a breakout that specifically matches the contact pads, the test pads on the bottom of a Sonoff Mini. And then there is a 3D printed base that this sits in. So if I make the PCB go away, there's this 3D printed base with holes for the bottoms of the pogo pins, and then a top that goes over it. And that provides a jig where you can take the PCB from a Sonoff Mini, clip it into place, and it's brought out the programming onto that standard 6-way header so that you can then just plug in the adapter with USB, hit flash, and you can reflash your Sonoff Mini. But this is just the first example of the sort of thing. The idea is that ultimately I want a whole lot of devices that use this same header, and then they can be tuned to whatever the specific target board is. But the critical thing is having that, James, for Seon's Fire Extinguisher Fund. Okay, I've got to send $20 to Seon. Yeah, the critical thing though is this 6-pin header. That is the key that makes this a flexible system. If we've got a programmer that has that 6-pin header exposed, then you can make you can either make target boards that have the header directly, or you can make adapters like this that allow you to reprogram whatever your target board is, which could have whatever crazy header it likes. So yeah, I'm going to stop that now. But let's get back to
having a standardized header, right? That's the key here.
Yes.
Right? And the only way people are going to standardize on header is if there's a programmer out there already for it. Like there's no point everyone going, yeah, let's standardize, but still not having a programmer to plug into it, right?
There has to be an example. You've got to start somewhere. So If a year from now my programmer is obsolete because you can buy them from China for $2, that's fantastic. But the key is to use this as a catalyst to get people using the standardized header and then build other things around it. And I think then we'll be in a much better position.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
So we'll get back to this fire extinguisher fund in a second. But just wrapping this up, my main contact at IT, who make the Sonoff, unfortunately just left this week, and so I have a new contact there that I've been talking to. So my old contact was Maggie, and she has gone on to another job, but she's passed me on to talk to a new person who is taking over her role. And just before Maggie finished up, she gave me the slightly disappointing news that yes, they are still wanting to change the header on the Sonoff, but in terms of the cycle, it could be a really long time before the header appears on any future Sonoffs. And she said it could be 1 or 2 years. So it's not something that's going to happen within months. Yeah, it surprised me how long she said it's likely to be. But in some ways, that gives us a window of opportunity to standardize on this. So if we start using this header and it becomes common, then when IT do decide that they're going to have their updated Sonoff models coming out with the programming header, it'll just make sense to use what is already out there, hopefully. So,
See, you know what this smells of? This smells of opportunity. Time to make a competing product in the Sonoffs.
with the header on it.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's make our own cheap Chinese home automation devices.
Yes.
That kind of leads us back to the RRP of the programmer, doesn't it?
It does. And so I'm still amused that James has put in $20 for your fire extinguisher fund.
It just means they're going to come and steal one of your fire extinguishers now.
No, the fire extinguishers are about $150 each, so it's more than $20. Because this live stream is hosted on my channel, that $20 is going to end up coming into my account. So I will forward your $20 to Seon. So thank you, James, for making that contribution to the firefighting fund. And Dodgy suggested sending IT one of the programming headers to patent from. Yeah, that's a good idea. I should just send them everything. They send, whenever they bring out a new product, they send me one. So I should send them whatever I come up with. Okay, so we were about to get into a conversation about pricing. And the thing is that we've been talking for 2 hours. You realize that?
I know.
Have you looked at the clock recently?
I have been watching the clock. It's way too quiet in my house right now, and I've been thinking to myself, "What is going on?"
There are no fire alarms going off.
No, but normally, if I can hear noise, screaming and shouting, I know everything is normal.
Yeah, because the kids
I can't hear anything. Something's bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Ecognito just said US $20 equals AU $30. Yeah, so I've got to send $30 to Seon.
No.
30 kangaroo bucks.
Okay, if we want to get into this, no, we're not going to get into it. No, whole different discussion. Forget it. Don't worry, not doing it.
Okay.
Not doing it. Yeah. The pricing your products discussion is it's a long discussion. There's no quick thing here. And it's something that I know you've struggled with. It's something we've spoken about, something I've really struggled with. Something that I guess for me has been a real interesting challenge because of my tiny Pico, which is the epitome of a price challenged product in a marketplace full of cheap stuff, right?
Yeah.
The amount of pushback and the amount of grief I copped early on from people about my pricing on that was insane. Yeah.
I feel your pain on that because I've had the same sort of reaction to many of my boards, things like the Ether 10 and the Ether Mega. I have people saying you can go out and buy a Raspberry Pi for like a quarter of the price of an Ether Mega. It's like, okay, then do it.
Do it.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, it's just proofs in the pudding, really. I sell a US $20 ESP32 board that to most people is identical to a $5 Chinese board, right? In terms of what their requirements are. And the fact that I've sold so many just shows that there's a marketplace for a high-end, really well-made, well thought out product when there is still $5 products in the marketplace, right?
Yes.
But that was I had to take a real big gamble on that, right? Like that could completely sunk
You've been
me.
very successful with that, and it sounds like you're selling good numbers of it. But even so, even if you can rationalize it to yourself and say people are paying this, every time someone makes a comment like, "Oh, it's so overpriced," it still stings personally. I
get people that join my stream. It hasn't been for a couple of weeks, thankfully. That the only reason they come on and leave a comment is to tell me that my stuff's overpriced.
Yeah.
That's what I come on for, right? Doing a stream.
So the classic response to that is, the design files are on GitHub. You go and make it cheaper.
Right. Well, see, here's the thing. I mean, I'm opening myself up for a world of pain now, but no one's cloned this yet. There's nothing like it. No one. Like, it's been long enough now. How long has it been? Like, was it March? No, August last year. I released whatever. The fact is, you can't make this board cheap, right?
No, that's right.
No one in China has decided that it's worth making a board like this, right? Because they only make boards based on a low dollar value, and that's the thing. Like it's, I think people think that I must make, I sell it for $20 I must make $18 on it.
Yeah, you're sitting on a train of cash. I can see it right there.
Like it doesn't work that way,
No,
it's
not at all.
Yeah. So that's why. But yeah, I'm happy to stay on the stream if you want to keep talking. By the way, if you want
to. Well, I think this is a deep discussion that we should go into another time. So I think we should probably wrap it up. But just one regarding your comment about no one's cloned it yet. My Ether Mega and Ether 10 boards, those designs have been on GitHub for 9 years now, and they still haven't been cloned either. And so the Ether Mega I sell for $119. So it's an expensive board.
Yeah.
But the reality is that it's James just said my stuff has been cloned. Okay. But the reality is that the cost of making that board, not just the parts on it, but the test process, being able to do things like test the Ethernet is not trivial. So our test procedure is that we actually exercise the Ethernet, we put an SD card in it, we exercise the SD card interface, and we verify that we can read and write to a card. Like all of this sort of stuff has to be done for every single board. You don't just put the parts on it, shove it in a bag and ship it off.
Yeah.
So there are lots of overheads that people don't take into account.
Absolutely. It's massive overheads. And also just quality. Like, I mean, but anyway, the thing that amazes me all the time is when like Apple release a new iPhone and then within 2 days, all these websites are showing here's this $1,200 phone and this is how much it costs them to make it. And all they do is list a cost of all the parts.
Yeah, it's a bill of materials breakdown and that's it.
That's right. And say this $350 is all it costs, and they're selling it for $1,200, and they ignore 90% of the product.
Yes.
Forgetting about all the R&D that went into it beforehand, and all the iterations and everything. Forgetting about all of that. Yep. There's a cost to make it. There's a cost to test it. There's a cost. There's cost to ship it. There's a cost to store it. There's a cost. You know what I mean? Like the bill of materials is a tiny amount, but that's all anyone looks at ever.
That's right. Just amortizing the cost of setting up the factory, that in itself, excuse me, that in itself is huge.
Yeah.
And we think about it from the point of view. Sorry to everybody's eardrums. We think about it from the point of view of setting up a desktop pick and place machine by rearranging some reels and the effort involved in that, and then amortizing that time against assembling some boards. But imagine amortizing building a factory with thousands of people and many, many millions of dollars worth of equipment in it, and building that factory to produce that one product. The investment is enormous.
Yep. And the investment of packaging them all and warehousing them all at that factory before they ship out, and you know, all of the infrastructure on tracking where every single item is, and like it's. I mean, I know it's no comparison, but like for what, like the amount of time it takes me to build a tiny Pico, like physically assemble the board, compared to the amount of time it takes to test it, flash it, make sure it's fine, clean it, and then make a bag of all the stuff that goes inside it and bag it.
Yeah.
Right. The all the manual work involved with all of that, the time it takes to assemble the board is like 15% of the time.
Yeah.
Right. Everything else around it takes up the rest of the time. It's you know, it's the bit that no one considers and no one thinks about. So
yes. We could keep going on this and I think the idea of RRP calculations and all of that sort of stuff is definitely something we should talk about in the future. But we're now past 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I think we should probably wrap it up. But this has been fantastic here having you on the stream. I really appreciate you coming on.
No, it's been great to be here and actually have people hear me. No, it's good. It's really good. We've been speaking about this for a long time. So yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Seon and I live in the same city, and we've known each other for a while. So we talk about this sort of thing through other channels, like on Discord, and we see each other at the local hackerspace from time to time. Yeah. In normal times, at least, not now. And for those that aren't aware, I mean, and I've said this, I think I said this to you the first time we met face to face, like, John has been a massive inspiration for me in terms of deciding that it's even possible to start a hardware business, a small hardware business. I'm not talking about an Adafruit or a SparkFun, you know what I mean? Like, you're one of the only people I know of who actually said, I'm going to design and sell hardware, and did it. You know, like, I know that you manufacture stuff overseas now a lot, but at the start you didn't. Right. And you did the whole everything from I'm designing something from scratch, I'm making it, I'm selling it, I'm setting up I'm selling it myself, I'm supporting it myself, I'm you know what I mean? And I probably, if I wouldn't have met you or found out about you, I don't know if I ever would have continued down my road of trying to build a hardware business.
And maybe your life would be much happier.
maybe. Or maybe I would have got into cars or something else. I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. And also a huge thank you to everybody, and for the people that put money in on those super chats. That's really generous of you. Yeah. Now, because we're running this through a different system to normal, running this through a StreamYard instead of OBS, I'm going to hit end broadcast, but I actually don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully YouTube will automatically stop the live stream, but we'll see.
I'll just keep waving.
Okay. I'll keep waving, and I'll just hit end broadcast, and I may have to manually stop it. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Seon.